Cyberpunk wasn't once the game that we are all playing today. I think we all know that. It was once named Cyberbug, made fun of, and was written off completely as the biggest letdown in gaming history. I mean, it was supposed to have Keanu Reeves set in the future, made by the same studio that had previously made one of the greatest games of all time in The Witcher 3. How could this fail? It seemed absolutely impossible, but it wasn't. Cyberpunk's launch on December 10th, 2020, that was the day all of this went down, and a day that went down in gaming history of one of the wildest disasters that we have ever seen. Now, nearly 5 years later, I think many of us are still flawed about how this game actually has turned out, especially when you see how the journey started. This once was hailed as CD Projekt Red's magnum opus. Cyberpunk promised an open-world RPG masterpiece set in the neon-drenched Night City, with customizable characters, immersive storytelling, and cutting-edge technology. Yes, we did eventually get that, but not at the start. Not when the game first came out. Still, pre-orders soared past 8 million by November 2020, and hype was fueled by the trailer showcasing Keanu Reeves as Johnny Silverhand. However, when this game did eventually hit the shelves in December, it was a train wreck that left fans, investors, and overall the industry just completely stunned. From game-breaking bugs to a plummeting stock price, media outrage to developer apologies, the launch was a perfect storm of hype gone wrong. However, when you fail this bad, I suppose the only way you can actually go is up, and well, CDPR certainly did go up. 5 years later, we have the game that we know and love today. Immersive storytelling, fantastic open world, and yes, all of the bugs that were plaguing the game at the very beginning, they have been completely fixed. It is the perfect example of a comeback story that you will find in the gaming industry. And in today's video, I'm going to be breaking all of that down and why this comeback should be set in the industry standard. And this needs to be the bare minimum that we expect from our favorite developers going forward when they have issues with their game. But before we do start the video, it turns out that a very small minority of people who actually watch my videos are subscribed. So if you find yourself enjoying today's content, please be sure to consider subscribing. It really does help support the channel. Before we get into how great this game now is, I think it is also important to take a look at where we actually came from, and that was obviously back in December 2020. On launch day, Cyberpunk was a buggy mess to say the absolute least, especially on base PS4 and Xbox One consoles. Now, Metacritic reviews from December 2020 gave it a very poor 52 out of 100 on those platforms, with Eurogamer calling it a technical catastrophe due to the frame rate drops going down to 15 to 20 FPS, texture pop-ins, and NPCs glitching through walls, literally. Now, there was many players reporting numerous glitches you can imagine, people T-posing, characters just standing on top of each other, quest progression even halting. Some quite literally couldn't even leave the starting area. Now, to really put it into perspective of how bad this launch was, especially on these old gen consoles, the game averaged a crash every single 30 minutes, with save files corrupted in 10% of these cases. Even PCs with high-end GPUs like the RTX 3080, optimization was shaky with stuttering in dense areas like Watson. Now, for a game that sold 8 million copies pre-launch, this was a betrayal of expectations, and the backlash was immediate. However, the chaos didn't quite stop with just the players, it hit CDPR's wallet hard. CDPR's stock dropped by nearly 30% in the launch week, wiping out 2 billion in market value and marking the biggest single day loss in Warsaw Stock Exchange history. Investors panicked, as you can imagine, and pre-order refunds spiked, with Sony actually processing over 100,000 requests by the 15th of December. Now, the financial strain was compounded by reports of mandatory crunch. It was revealed that developers worked 100-hour weeks, fueling the public anger and lawsuits from shareholders claiming their misrepresentation. CDPR's market cap, once at 8 billion in August 2020, shrank to 5.6 billion by the end of the year, and the CEO's apology video on December 12th did little to stem the tide. As a fan, seeing a studio I admired take such a financial hit wasn't pleasant to say the least, especially previously when they'd made the greatest game of all time in my opinion. It was hard to watch, but you couldn't help but understand why people were upset. Behind the scenes, I suppose you can say that CDPR's missteps only fueled the fire. Now, the pre-launch demos in 2019 were on PC with mods, misleading console players about the performance. Now, it was actually revealed that in December 2020, an investigation took place, and they basically found out that they hid the base console builds until the very last minute, marketing overpromised with the features like seamless NPC interactions, which were pretty much either cut or broken, and the decision to rush the release despite despite knowing these issues were there. The lack of transparency eroded trust with the fans especially, and the lawsuits were piling up, over $1 million in claims by January 2021. Now, the launch was undoubtedly a self-inflicted wound, and as a fan I did feel let down at the time, so much so that it left me to completely abandon the game and forget about it all the way until 2023. However, it was good to know that all of this chaos wasn't for nothing. It set the stage for an incredible comeback, not only just an incredible comeback, but maybe gaming's best ever comeback. After the chaotic launch that was Cyberpunk 2077, no one expected them to actually come back as far as where they are today. Since 2020, CDPR has turned this game in a way that is nothing short of legendary. Now, as a fan who did watch that stock crash and the memes pile up, it is nice to see how far they've actually come and how they actually pulled this off. 5 years of relentless updates, transformative changes, jaw-dropping improvements, and a redemption that's been rewritten in gaming history. The recovery firstly kicked off with patch 1.1 in 2021 on January 21st. Now, after this entire mess, this was a crucial first step. It was an opportunity for CDPR to tackle some of the worst bugs, fix some of the worst crashes, and overall just try and get the game as stable as possible. And the patches kept coming. Patch 2.1 in February 2021 added a lot of fixes to some quests all around Night City and also tweaked some NPC behaviors. Then came patch 1.3, 1.4, and finally one of the bigger ones in patch 1.5. That released on February 15th, 2020. The patches kept coming, the game kept getting better, and people were starting to actually come back to the game after brushing it off completely when it first launched. The game also received some huge support from a little anime series called Cyberpunk Edge Runners that came out on Netflix, helping start a huge resurgence for the game, and also a little thing called Phantom Liberty, adding Dogtown, a new storyline, plus revamped combat with smoother animations and new cyberware slots. Now, at this point in time at Phantom Liberty, Cyberpunk was already recovered. It was starting to look more like Cyberpunk rather than Cyberbug, and to top it all off, CDPR went ahead and released one of the greatest DLCs of all time. That was all with patch 2.0 on September 21st, 2023, and by then I think people started to truly understand how good this game really was. People also started to appreciate and respect CD Projekt Red for actually sticking to their guns and making sure that this game got fixed like they'd promised us. And I suppose this recovery brings us to where we are today with the patch 2.3. And later on this year, we'll be celebrating the 5th anniversary of this game actually releasing, so I can imagine they're going to give us something else there. It took a lot of hard work and a lot of determination from the people at CDPR, but it is actually fantastic to see how they managed to recover this game and how it should set an example and the standard for the rest of the gaming industry when their games come with issues and bugs. Many other studios would have seen their game go bad and just decide to leave it and move on to the next one. They would have kind of just forgot about it, swept it under the rug without a single care in the world. They would have just went ahead and mass produced another Assassin's Creed or another FIFA or something. Not here, not with CDPR. They saw the reception that everyone had towards this game, they saw how everyone was disappointed, and they went ahead and fixed it. This recovery wasn't just all code, it was all heart. They were fueled by the passion that they had for a project that they had been working on for years. They weren't going to allow this failure to just slip by. The cultural impact of this was massive. The recovery shifted the narrative completely. Gaming media outlets would go ahead and revisit the game, giving it far higher ratings than you could have ever imagined in 2020. As a fan, this journey from memes to masterpieces proves that resilience can in fact rewrite history. Where we stand today, Night City has never felt more alive. We've got so many fantastic side quests, amazing vehicles, customization options, and weapons. As well as that, it helps when you have such an immersive world to lose yourself in. What a waste all of this would have been. The lore, the characters, everything here with Cyberpunk. What a waste it all would have been if they have just let this to rot. What a gem everyone would have missed out on. CDPR not only delivered us a fantastic game, but also, I like to think, rebuilt the trust between themselves and the community. We can expect a great game from CD Projekt Red, and we know that we can trust them. And I suppose that's what it's all about, isn't it? Trust. And CDPR have got my trust, but I wish I could say the same for many other gaming studios. Gaming studios that know they have underdelivered for their fans, yet do nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, to try and rectify that that mistake. Cyberpunk's recovery has made accountability the new norm. CDPR's 5-year commitment delivering all of these patches gave us free content and addressed bugs is absolutely the bare minimum that we should expect when we are purchasing a game, especially for the extortionate prices that are charged now. I don't even think it's a sense of adding bug fixes after the game's launched. I also think this additional free content that CDPR have been giving us is very generous and something I would actually really like to see other companies do as well. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2, it launched very smoothly in 2018, but the post-launch support was very minimal. No major updates beyond bug fixes, and by 2025 the only thing actually getting a few updates here and there was Red Dead Online, which received its first update in ages. Imagine the amazing post-launch content we could have got on a game like that. I really do think that this whole Cyberpunk situation is the true blueprint for redemption. It sets the benchmark where studios must own their mistakes, and as someone who saw it crash and burn right in front of my eyes, this effort turned a flop into a lesson, and it truly did raise the bar for everyone around them. So going forward, I really do think that companies should see this as the blueprint and model of how to treat your fans, especially after dropping so far down. Everybody loves Cyberpunk right now. I like to think everyone does at least, and if they can come from where they did and get to the heights that they are now, what is stopping those other companies, Bethesda, Ubisoft, from going ahead and putting in the same amount of effort for their games rather than feeding us slop? Just a thought. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should other companies be striving to be more like CD Projekt Red? Be sure to like and subscribe as well. It really does help support the channel, as I previously said, and hopefully you have a great rest of your day.